රෝස සුවඳ තවත් තිකු කලක් රැඳෙන්න ඩබල් පර්ෆියුම් ලුක් සමගින් එන නව සන්ලයිට් රෝස්.
In your headlines tonight, crucial times as daily COVID-19 deaths reach record levels and pressure mounts. The government announces a 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. quarantine curfew beginning tomorrow. For the greater need, the National Blood Transfusion Service sounds the alarm over dwindling blood reserves for critically ill patients.
Many patients who are getting admitted to cancer treatments and the chronic renal failure patients, the thalassemia patients and the patients with leukemia, lymphoma, they need blood and blood components to survive.
Shocking rise. Online shoppers alarmed by a sudden raising of the levy on foreign transactions by commercial banks. Deja vu. As Afghanistan stands at a historical crossroads with an imminent Taliban takeover, the country's envoy in Colombo joins us to discuss the unfolding situation. All this and much more coming up tonight, this Sunday, the 15th of August 2021.
කට උත්තර නැති වෙන්න කලින් සිග්නල් ඩීප් ක්ලීන් එකකට මාරු වෙන්න.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a warm welcome, bringing you the latest tonight. An island-wide quarantine curfew is to be imposed from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. every night until further notice, beginning from tomorrow, in a move to slow down the rapid spread of the Delta variant across the country. Now, the announcement comes in the backdrop of further restrictions announced today on public gatherings, with weddings, celebrations banned, a limit to indoor dining at restaurants as well. However, marriage registration ceremonies will be permitted without any guests present.
Chief of the National Operations Centre for the Prevention of COVID-19, General Shavindra Silva, announced a short while ago that an island-wide quarantine curfew will be imposed until further notice from every night from 10 p.m. until 4 p.m. starting from tomorrow. With that, only essential services staff will be allowed to move about during this period. In more news, the government announced a new set of restrictions this evening in response to the heightened threat of the Delta variant. Accordingly, all manner of public gatherings will be restricted from midnight tonight. These include in-house dining at restaurants, for which only 50% of the restaurant's capacity will be permitted. Meanwhile, from the midnight of the 17th of August, weddings will not be allowed to be held at banquet halls or residences. However, the Army Command announced that wedding registrations can still be held sans a public gathering. In the meantime, the entire island entered into strict inter-provincial travel restrictions from midnight last Friday, allowing only personnel employed in essential services to cross provincial borders. Following this development, police surveillance remained high at all provincial borders to nab anyone attempting to disobey the orders.
We have strengthened our roadblock at entry and exit points of Western Province especially, and yesterday 4,544 persons have been checked at the roadblock. In addition to that, 582 persons have been sent back to their original places, along with 333 vehicles as they were trying to cross the provincial border without any reason. In addition to that, we have covered the entry and exit points of each province along with Tri-Forces members. So therefore, general public is not allowed to cross provincial borders under any circumstances. However, the members of essential services can cross the borders to perform their duties.
With that, 108 people who were found violating safety protocols were arrested by the police yesterday. Meanwhile, in the absence of official lockdown announcements, some local authorities seem to be taking matters into their own hands, such as the mayor of Gampa, Eranga, who announced that shops in the Gampa town are to close from today. Speaking to AdaDerana, he said that the decision was taken in consultation with the city's traders in response to the COVID-19 situation.
අද සේවසකට වැඩි ජනතා විශ්වාසය නව සංයෝගයකින් රයිනෝ රෝෆිං සහ සීලිං ෂීට්.
බත අට එකට මුසුකොට හෙළදිව් අට මුසු.
Now, the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan currently stands at a major crossroads as its capital, Kabul, remains encircled by thousands of Taliban fighters being held back as they await a peaceful handing over of the capital by the incumbent Afghan government. Described as the single biggest policy disaster since the Suez crisis by the chairman of the UK's Commons Foreign Affairs Committee, Tom Tugendhat, that the mood among the international community at the recent reversal of the country's fortunes can best be described as somber and in a state of disbelief at how rapidly the worm has turned. Now, to discuss more on the fallout, we thought of inviting the envoy in Colombo, His Excellency Ashraf Haidari, joining us tonight on the news. A warm welcome.
Thank you very much.
A tragic situation, unfortunate to hear what's happening in Afghanistan. In your country, give us a brief about the situation there.
Well, unfortunately, the situation is very concerning, and the statement made by this senior British official is correct. Unfortunately, this was not supposed to happen. No Afghan had expected this to happen, but unfortunately it has happened simply because of the abrupt withdrawal of U.S. forces and their enablers, on which our forces had long been depending to defend Afghanistan and to ensure also regional stability and international peace and security. So we see what has unfolded, unfortunately, and where we stand today.
Well, since the fallout of Taliban in 2001 following the September 11 attacks, I think the country looked somewhat on the road to modernization. But it's unfortunate now with the recent withdrawal of US troops. Shortly after the withdrawal, this situation unfolds. Tell us about what's happening here. How are you all dealing with the international community? What is the response there now?
Exactly, and that's the tragedy of all this, that since the fall of the Taliban in 2001, over the past 20 years, Afghanistan has made transformational gains in terms of democracy, women's rights, human rights, and of course economic development and connectivity, internal and external, and overall, building hopes of even moving forward to build on what has been achieved over the past 20 years with the support of the international community. But unfortunately, that is now unraveling because of the withdrawal of U.S. forces, unfortunately, and also a lack of effective and tangible international response over the past 2 years when this peace process was initiated under the former Trump administration, which was supposed to result in a results-driven peace talks between the government of Afghanistan and the Taliban, so that with U.S. fulfilling its commitment of withdrawal, with DAS, although we were not a part of the negotiation of that agreement, we released over 5,500 terrorists and drug traffickers, of course, members of the Taliban movement, as a gesture of goodwill and also commitment to making peace in order to prevent exactly the situation that has emerged today. But the Taliban also under that commitment, under that agreement, made several commitments, including reducing violence and committing to a ceasefire, and then engaging with us in a serious peace talk towards a sustainable political settlement, which unfortunately they have not, and reneged on each of those commitments. And as that happened, then the Biden administration suddenly announced the withdrawal of all of their forces and all their enablers, including the contractors that used to provide logistical critical maintenance and air support assistance to the Afghan National Security Forces as they, had been, providing protection and defense of Afghanistan. So that's where we are now.
Now with the Taliban assuring that human rights, fairness for women, the media, and Afghan national military personnel, what faith do you have in these assurances, especially to the diplomatic community too? The Taliban have been assuring that the transition will be smooth. However, we see that the US, UK missions are pulling out of Afghanistan as immediately as possible.
Unfortunately, that too, these evacuations, as we have been seeing, and now thousands of forces being sent to Afghanistan, have completely demoralized not only our forces, which had been fighting very fiercely in different parts of Afghanistan, but also this, resistance movement fighters, but also now demoralized the Afghan people, because as they see is the embassies evacuating their civilian staff and diplomats, and that is telling the Afghan people that you're abandoned, we don't care, we don't care about whether you can sustain what you have achieved with us or without us, and so forth. So it's a very unfortunate situation, but let's see whether the Taliban would actually deliver on their assurances. And that, as we speak, I think begins with the situation in Kabul, that they must not enter the city as they've committed, that they must stand by and wait for a resolution forward in order to make the transition peaceful and without doing additional harm to an already suffering population. Remember, 500,000 Afghans have been displaced. Many of them have ended up in Kabul on the streets and the parks, exposed without food, shelter, water, and so forth, amid a COVID crisis where in Afghanistan, unfortunately, people are so overwhelmed and so worried about their day-to-day survival that no one is really caring about the COVID situation. And then you add on top of that the adverse effects of climate change, the ongoing drought in Afghanistan, and as well as these climate-induced floodings which have destroyed so many homes and arable land and livestock on which these innocent civilians depend on. So we would like to see that the Taliban abide by their commitment and wait for this process to happen peacefully, and to ensure the safety and security of the population of Kabul, which is a vast population, simply because of the years of war and violence. Unfortunately, most people have migrated from rural areas into Kabul. So it's densely populated, and God forbid if the safety and security is not assured, and the assurances that you pointed out the Taliban will not deliver upon, then we might see violence mostly affecting an already suffering population.
We understand, as you said, nearly a 500 population is attempting to flee Afghanistan or are displaced, and at the same time Sri Lankan authorities have assured that around 50 Sri Lankans living in Afghanistan measures will be taken to repatriate them to Colombo. But what would be the fate of the population, the estimated 500,000 that is affected, seeking support? What support are you seeing from the international community here, and how do you expect to see this transition of power? I know there is talk about this, but how smooth? How is it to happen? How is it expected to happen?
First, the Sri Lankan civilians stuck in Kabul, I'm sure that work is being done to help evacuate them, and of course there are assurances from all sides to ensure the security and safety of diplomats or other foreign citizens in Afghanistan. Second, to your question of who's helping, the government has been helping IDPs in Kabul, but also the United Nations agencies have been providing relief assistance. And they have appealed for $1.3 billion. They have about 40% of that met. They've been calling on additional assistance to meet that appeal, which I also call right now on the international community to meet that need, because really the needs of these vulnerable people are increasing by day, and more people are actually adding to this. And the last part of the question was how
The
yes.
transition of power and
the
how
transition is happening. I believe as we speak, there is a delegation that has just left for Doha and to see the talks that would happen there and the issues that they would discuss. We've also just heard that the president has just left the country, the implication of that and how that would be figured into this talks, and we only hope for a peaceful transition. My personal focus, having a people's background and having been displaced and of course been through conflicts and very difficult life in Afghanistan, I only hope that whatever that from now on happens would not affect innocent civilians.
Thank you very much for your time here in our studios. Our thoughts and prayers are with your people, and we deeply feel for what's going on in Afghanistan.
Thank you so much.
We had with us the Ambassador of Afghanistan here in Sri Lanka, Ashraf Haidari, joining us. We'll take a short commercial break here at First and 9.
Big 3.
Welcome back. Opposition parties have called for the government to impose an immediate 4-week lockdown across the country in light of the rapid spread of the Delta variant. Quoting a World Health Organization report that estimates Sri Lanka's death toll by January to reach a staggering 30,000 deaths unless stringent controls over public movements are imposed, the United National Party, Samagi Jana Balavega and the Tamil National Alliance are calling on the government to set aside politics and include them in the report, or rather in the effort to save an estimated 18,000 lives mentioned as per the report.
United National Party leader Ranil Wickremesinghe today called on President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to summon an all-party leaders meeting where a consensus could be reached on how the government should approach its battle with the Delta variant.
The WHO Sri Lanka office have estimated that there will be 30,000 deaths this year. I request the President that he summons the leaders of all the political parties in Parliament. That will also include the Prime Minister. In addition, summon the Speaker and the Health Ministers. Whatever political party we belong to, it's essential that we contain the number of deaths. That is the duty of all political parties at this hour. And I know they will all cooperate once a consensus is reached.
Meanwhile, Tamil National Alliance parliamentarian M.A. Sumandiran also addressed the issue, accusing the government of ignoring the advice of health experts and making matters worse. While calling for the imposition of a complete halt to public movements for a 4-week period, the Jaffna district parliamentarian appealed to the public to take responsibility for their own safety and stay home, regardless of the government's response.
The government must take full responsibility for the situation that we are in now. The fight against COVID-19 was not done properly on the advice of the health authorities, nor was the vaccination program done according to their advice. We need to urgently address the situation. At least at this moment, our appeal to the government is listen to the public health officials. The health authorities for some time now have been urging a close down of the country. Due to the urgency of the situation, the country must be locked down. People's movement must be not just restricted, but brought to a halt. And our appeal to the people is that whatever the government says, even if the government is acting on political expediency and not on your interest, you must have your own interest at heart.
With that, Samagi Jana Balavega MP Eran Wickremesinghe added that if Sri Lanka goes into an immediate lockdown, an estimated 18,000 deaths could be averted by January 2022.
This report is saying we need to act now. Our urgent priority is to save lives. Sri Lanka will avert about 18,000 deaths by January 2022, if the level of stringency is immediately increased, similar to May 2021 for 4 weeks. The Delta variant is really expanding. It doesn't come through animals or mice or anything like that. It only gets communicated from person to person. And that is why there has to be restriction. We will give the government every possible support to save lives. I don't say this insensitively. People are finding it very difficult to live economically. But we are pushed to say that saving lives over the next 4 weeks is going to be more important than anything else.
Sri Lanka's daily COVID-19 death toll once again hit record levels yesterday, with 160 patients succumbing to the virus, which brings the country's overall death toll ever closer to the 6,000 mark. With that, health authorities are continuing to urge the public to exercise strictest adherence to health and safety guidelines, or risk falling prey to what has been the most deadliest strain of COVID-19 to rear its head to date. With health officials have been calling for the public to join in the effort, saying that authorities and Triforce's personnel cannot curb the spread of the virus on their own.
As Sri Lanka's daily cases and deaths continue to rise, health authorities are continuing to press the public to adhere to the health and safety guidelines and to get vaccinated to prevent an escalation of the current situation. Currently, with over 35,000 active cases and 5,935 fatalities, Sri Lanka's healthcare system is fast reaching a tipping point. Many major hospitals are currently finding it hard to provide the necessary care to the spike in COVID patients that continues to exceed the 3,000 mark per day. As in the previous days, 3,263 cases were confirmed across the country yesterday. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka also recorded its highest ever daily fatalities yesterday of 160. As such, State Minister of Production, Supply and Regulation of Pharmaceuticals Professor Channa Jayasumana says that health officials and military alone will not be able to bring the pandemic under control and urge the public to exercise discipline.
ඊළඟ සති දෙක තාම වැදගත් තීරණාත්මක කාල පරිච්ඡේදයක් වෙනවා. මොකද මේ වෛරසයේ බීජ ඖෂධ සමය අවසන් වෙලා රෝගීන් ප්‍රමාණය වැඩි වෙන්න පුළුවන් කාල සීමාවක් දින කිහිපයක් තමයි අප ඉදිරියට එන්නේ. ඒක නිසා අත්‍යවශ්‍යම කටයුත්තකට මිසක් තමන්ගේ නිවසෙන් එළියට යන්න නරකයි. ඒ එළියට ගියොත් වෛරසයට නිරාවරණය වෙනවා, ලෙඩේ හැදෙන්න පුළුවන් කියන එක හිතේ තියාගෙනම එළියට යන්න ඕන. මොකද ඒ තරම්ම මේ වෛරසයේ ස්වභාවය ඩෙල්ටා ප්‍රභේදය ඊටාම දරුණු එකක්. ඒක බොහොම ලේසියෙන් ඇඟේ ඇලෙන්න, ඒ වගේම පෙනහළු වලට යන්න, සිරුරට හානි කරන්න පුළුවන් જાති එකක්.
Meanwhile, on the country's inoculation front, health officials and Triforce personnel have been able to reach the government's target of vaccinating the over 30 population with at least one vaccine dose, well ahead of its deadline. The country's estimated figure of people aged over 30, according to last year's statistics, stands at 11.4 million. However, health officials have inoculated 11,850,308 people with at least one vaccine dose, but say there are still many that remain unvaccinated in this age group. With this being the case, it begs the question, what could be the reason for such a disparity?
මේ වෙනකොට අපි ලක්ෂ 115 සීමාව ඉක්මවා ගිහිල්ලා තියෙනවා එන්නත් ලබා දීමේදී. හැබැයි තවම සිටිනවා ඊටාම සුළු පිරිසක් අවුරුදු 30ට වැඩි එන්නත් ලබා නොගත්ත හැම දිස්ත්‍රික්කයකම. අවුරුදු 18 30 කාණ්ඩයේ පිරිසකුත් මේ වෙනකොට එන්නත් ලබාගෙන තියෙනවා. ඒ තමයි ඇඟලුම් කර්මාන්ත ශාලාවල වැඩ කරපු අය. ඒ වගේම රජයේ අත්‍යවශ්‍ය සේවාවල වැඩ කරපු අය. ආරක්ෂක අංශවල සහ ඉදිරිපෙළ සෞඛ්‍ය සේවකයෝ හැටියට වැඩ කරපු අවුරුදු 18ත් 30ත් අතර කාණ්ඩෙත් සැලකිය යුතු පිරිසක් මේ වෙනකොට එන්නත් ලබාගෙන තියෙනවා. දීපු එන්නත් ඇතුලේ මේ පිරිසත් ඉන්නවා. ඒකයි අවුරුදු 30ට වැඩි උදවියගේ යම් පිරිසක් මේ වෙනකොට ඉතිරි වෙලා තියෙන්නේ.
Meanwhile, in the breakdown of vaccinations yesterday, 309,555 were carried out across the island. The figure includes 17,219 Covishield first doses and 493 second doses, along with 65,695 Sinopharm first doses and 217,712 second doses. In addition, the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines were also administered yesterday as well. In the meantime, 2,576 COVID-19 infections have been confirmed so far today. In other developments, 2,387 COVID recoveries were also reported today, taking the island's overall tally to 309,732.
The director of the National Blood Transfusion Service, Dr. Lakshman Edirisinga, has issued a clarion call for urgent blood donations as national reserves have dwindled to dangerous levels, posing a serious risk to the terminal ill. Dr. Edirisinga explained that prospective donors need not be afraid of donating, as all precautions have been taken to make it a safe and secure process, explaining that even individuals vaccinated against COVID-19 can do so as long as 1 week has passed since getting their jabs.
The National Blood Transfusion Service announced today that blood reserves have depleted at the moment, resulting in serious issues in catering to the daily demand from hospitals.
On a normal day, we require around 1,200 to 1,500 units of blood. Under the COVID situation, many of the routine surgeries in some of the hospitals, when that was stopped, our daily requirement has also come down in significant numbers. But under any circumstances, we need to have 900 to 950 units of blood to service the patient population getting admitted to the hospitals throughout the country. The current situation is, out of this daily requirement of 950, we are collecting around 550 to 600 units over the last couple of weeks. Under these circumstances, our national blood reserves are being depleted significantly.
Dr. Edrisinghe called on any person willing to donate blood to book a prior appointment through the centre's hotline 011 5332 153 or 011 5332 154, or by registering with the online donor pre-registration system at www.nbts.health.
Any eligible donor who is willing to donate blood throughout the country can get through these two hotlines and get a reservation from any of the 107 blood centers scattered throughout the country. And they can donate blood under very secure and healthy circumstances.
Further, Dr. Edrisinghe also explained the importance of maintaining sufficient reserves, as despite there being a drop in emergency requirements due to the travel restrictions, there are critically ill patients for whom daily blood transfusions are their only lifeline.
Even though some of the road traffic accidents and the domestic accidents are less during this period of time due to movement restriction, still the blood requirement stays around 900 units per day. That is due to many patients who are getting admitted to cancer treatments, and the chronic renal failure patients, the thalassemia patients, and the patients with leukemia, lymphoma. They need blood and blood components to survive. The other requirement is there are around 900 to 1,000 babies are born throughout the country. So to prevent maternal deaths in case of a sudden blood loss during deliveries, we need a safe supply of blood.
However, he added that given the current situation in the country, there are certain restrictions on just who can actually donate blood.
There are certain restrictions from our side. If somebody has got the vaccination, any of the varieties of vaccines, first dose or second dose, whichever the dose, they are not eligible to donate within first week of inoculation.
Welcome back. Online shoppers were in for a bit of shock with reports of some commercial banks having decided to raise their levy on online foreign transactions to between 6% to 7%.
Online shopping has always been an activity that many people enjoy and look forward to doing since the platforms came into existence, and even more so due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. However, reports of a hike in the levy charged on foreign transactions has raised much public concern. Certain commercial banks recently announced that the fee charged on foreign transactions has been raised from its former rate of 2.5% to between 6 to 7%. The move reportedly comes in the backdrop of the country's steep rupee depreciation against the dollar. Having reached out to the Central Bank of Sri Lanka for comment on the hike, officials declined to officially comment on the issue, as the decision remains at the sole discretion of the commercial banks. However, officials did agree that the rate hike was, quote, aggressive, end quote, and would be taking up the issue with the banks in question over a possible revision of their decision. If the new rate hike sticks, consumers can expect to pay an estimated 222 rupees as the dollar exchange rate for online foreign transactions, despite the current dollar rate set at 203 rupees by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka.
Thanks for watching. Good night.